Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar where people are just logging in now. So I'm just going to talk through a couple of minutes here just so we can get everyone up. We have a record-setting crowd coming today, so just letting people have a chance to log in before we get started. But great to have so many people so interested in our webinar series. As just if you just give us, be patient just for a minute or so. I'm watching the numbers click up as I speak. So I'll get started here. Welcome to our webinar. Today we have a really great topic, finding your next job or having it find you. Definitely a point of interest with the volume of people that have signed up for our meeting today. My name is John Gilmore, one of the managing partners here at BarkerGilmore. Just really great to have everyone here. We put on these webinars on a monthly basis, and our intention really is just to help people to better position themselves, become better in-house counsel or better chief compliance officers. And it's really an honor to have an opportunity to share so much positive information. Today's webinar is part of our GC Advantage series. If you go to our website, you'll see that we put these on a monthly basis. We have our world-class CEOs, general counsel, chief compliance officers, and search consultants all take part in these on an annual or on a monthly basis. We actually, and today's no exception, our great advisors are able to attract or recruit really top tier business executives to join us and support these sessions. So we're really honored to do that. If you go to our website, you can see the listing of the new or upcoming webinars. We look like we have December, January, February posted here. Take a look at that, sign up for them. We're happy to put those on. All of the webinars, including today, are recorded. You'll see them up on our site. It takes us about 3 weeks to get the data up on our site. If you'll just be a little bit patient, we'll send you an email once the data is up there or the content's up there so you can take a look at it or share with colleagues or friends. So keep track of the email notices that we give you or come back time to time to our website. We do offer the opportunity to ask direct questions to us. If you scroll down on your the Zoom, you will see the Q&A section. Feel free to click on it anytime during our presentation. We'll try to get to some of the questions throughout the presentation. But we'll also have a Q&A period at the end. And if anybody has a question, for example, that's not answered, feel free to reach out to Maureen or me or anyone on our team at any time. We'll be glad to share our thoughts. Today's webinar is hosted, or I should say led by Maureen Brundage. We couldn't be more thrilled. My partner Bob and I are just really thrilled with all of the advisors on our team. But Maureen is no exception, former general counsel of Chubb, a former partner at White & Case. So Maureen always brings a perspective that everyone certainly appreciates. So with that said, I will introduce Maureen to get things started. And the one nice thing about this webinar, unlike others, is not only am I here to introduce Maureen, but she was kind enough to ask me to participate. So I'll be involved along the way.
Thanks, John. And before introducing our other panelists, we're going to begin with a polling question. This one will have to do with your employment and job search status. With respect to this question and all the questions we're going to have, the answers are anonymous. So we're not storing the information and we will not be harassing you about jobs. Also, my plan is, just in the interest of time, I'm not going to read the options. I'm going to leave that for you to do. So you should read the options and just click whichever option best describes your employment and job search status. And while you're doing that, I am going to introduce our panelists. As John already indicated, he graciously agreed to be a panelist with me today, and he indicated he needs no introduction, which probably is true. But as you all hopefully know, John has over 30 years of executive search experience, specializing with general counsels and chief compliance officers, who I think he can really add a lot of value to today's discussions. I also am delighted to have Sunita Holzer joining us, who also has over 30 years of HR experience. She currently is Executive Vice President and Chief Human Resource Officer of Reality Holding Corp., which is the leading provider of US residential and real estate services. Its brand portfolio includes such well-known names as Century 21, Coldwell Banker, and Cochrane. Prior to joining Reality 5 years ago, Sunita was CHRO at Computer Services Corporation and also at the Chubb Corporation, where I had the pleasure of working with her. As John already indicated, I'm an senior advisor with BarkerGilmore and also was general counsel at Chubb. And in my time at Chubb and at White & Case, I did a lot of talent hiring. Also, I have been involved in my own job search and have also guided a number of people on their job search in connection with my advisory and coaching roles. So that's who we are, and I'm glad to have you all here today. More detailed bios are available in the information on this webinar on the BarkerGilmore website, and also will be provided at the end on the materials for this webinar. Before we look at the polling results, I want to address what may be the elephant in this virtual room, which is the impact of the pandemic on the job market. We obviously have heard about some industries that have been hurt very hard, some other industries perhaps not so much. We have all heard and continue to hear about job layoffs and job freezes at some companies. But also some companies are in fact hiring. In a recent August survey done by Paycor, it indicated that more than half of small and mid-sized companies plan to still hire this year. In anticipation of this webinar, I had some conversations with general counsel and in-house counsel candidates about what they thought about the job market. They indicated that although the spring things slowed, the summer they felt things picked up, and I believe it's really active now. Sunita and John and I had the opportunity to discuss this in our prep call, so I'd like to bring them into the discussion as well. Sunita, can you just talk what your views generally on the job market in general you think are today?
Thank you, Maureen. I think it's an extremely robust job market, and there's two factors. One is the nature of work right now, where people are working remotely. It makes it very easy for them to apply for jobs and interview remotely, and it's a much faster process than before. The second is the inverse of that, which is companies now no longer necessarily need all of their talent to be located in a centralized place, and so they are also very open to having talent work anywhere in the United States as long as they can work via video. So that has created a very robust market. Coming out of the spring, your feedback coming out actually late winter, early spring, it was a total shutdown almost because people didn't know what to do. But then it was almost as if you opened up the pent-up demand, and there's been an enormous amount of activity, especially in functional areas like legal.
Great. John, what are you seeing in terms of the legal in-house market?
Yeah, just like Sunita said, we're actually pleasantly surprised. People sometimes confuse it with me complaining how busy we are because we have so many orders. But I think our order status right now is double what we had this time last year. So it's really working out great. In March, when we left the office and had to be sheltered at home, needless to say, I was extremely concerned. This darn Zoom video has really helped everything. And as soon as April and May, everything picked right back up again. In fact, that's when things started escalating. And we are in a bit of a, two different worlds. One where Sunita's saying that people have come to grips with the fact that people can work remotely and be very successful in those roles. And then we have others that are very much committed to okay, obviously everyone's working remotely during the pandemic, but as soon as the pandemic's over, I need you to physically relocate. Those general counsel, so let me just make sure I understand, everyone understands that. The general counsel, what we're finding is the GCs, people want them on the ground at some point. So I'm not looking for full-time or long-term remote GCs. But when GCs are building their organizations and having the lawyers work for them, the GCs that are open-minded and able to have them people work remotely long-term, we're filling those positions in 30 days or just over 30 days. It's crazy how fast it's happening. But the GCs that are looking for people to relocate, relocation is definitely a concern to people. I will say when we do have a good quality GC search, people are willing to relocate. So we don't really have an issue, but it's the individual contributor versus the GC role.
And the location requirement or the fact that remote would be a possibility, that generally would be in the job posting, or when you're talking to the candidate, you'd make that clear?
Yeah, we would know that right up front and we make it very clear. I'm just saying the people that are open-minded to people working remotely long-term, there's a lot of people out there that are quite accustomed and enjoying the remote working situation, and they're ready to make a move very quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, Taylor, can we have the polling results? So we have the majority are currently employed and they're not actively looking, but as perhaps everyone should always be open to new opportunities. And there you see down from that, there are some that are employed but are actively looking. So it is sort of varied. Thank you.
I'd like to just jump in and say one thing. The best time to look for a job or to be open-minded to opportunities is when you don't need to be looking. So it's the majority of people we place are in that situation of exactly that, not actively looking, but open to listening to opportunities.
Right, no, exactly. And one thing that I think is very important, even if you are not actively looking, periodically, you should step back and think about your career and think about what you're doing and what you want to do. What are your career objectives? Are you on the right path to achieve those objectives? You also need to do an honest self-assessment of what skills you have and what skills maybe you need to get that next role that you really may want down the line, even if you're not currently looking for it and are not actively in job search mode. The pandemic may have added to your skill base. You now have the ability to work remotely, and maybe you're managing remotely. It has provided many people with agility, and also some people have had to deal with crisis management. So you should think a bit about the skills that you have developed and perhaps think about what other skills you want to develop going forward. We did talk in the prep call about whether going and getting a certification now in a certain area, would that really help to fill the skill gaps? And Sunita made the excellent point that although education and continuous learning is important, and that's good to show, really hands-on experience will trump education every time. So it's great to learn, great to get educated, but look for opportunities to get really hands-on experience. If you think you may want to make a move, one good place to begin is in your own company, whether it's in your department or in another department, perhaps moving over to the business side. And that may be more possible in a company that already knows you. Sometimes promotions may be hard gotten, but taking a lateral move may wind up giving you the opportunity to get more diverse experience and to add to that skill base that is so important in getting you where you want to go. So those are things that you should think about and look for those opportunities. If notwithstanding that, you decide that you do want to really look outside the company, one thing you could consider doing is to create an action or marketing plan. If you could bring up the slide, Taylor. And one thing that is important to do is to determine how much time you really want to or have to devote to job search. There's a saying that really is true. Finding a job is a full-time job. So if you are serious about finding a new job, you need to make sure that you build into your daily calendar time spent on job search. You should set yourself weekly or daily goals that you are achievable, but that will make you spend time each day on job search if that is something that is important to you. It may be good to write down and have a written document where you put down all these various things, including your professional objectives. What do you want to achieve? What roles are you interested in? Think about putting together your positioning statement or your profile, as it were. Think about and write down, what are your areas of expertise? What skills do you have and you'll bring to the table? And what business needs do you address, and will you address in a new company? You should also think about what have been your major accomplishments at the various jobs that you've had. And this document can be for your eyes only, just for you to get pen to paper to help you think things through, or you can use it to share with others to get their input. As we talked about before, geography may be an issue for you. Though as John and Sunita indicated, it may not be. More and more companies are allowing people to work remotely, so it may be less of an issue now than it was. But as John indicated, in some GC roles, they will want you at headquarters, so it may be a limitation. So are you willing to relocate, and where are you willing to relocate, or where not? And you may think, oh, I'll take a job anywhere, but to have thought through the process is really helpful and important. Think about what industries that you want to focus on, either what industries you bring something to the table, or what industries are you very interested in. And then within those industries, are there particular companies that intrigue you and you want to target, and that will satisfy whatever geographic limitations that you may have. Again, this plan you can use for your eyes only, or you can share with others to get their input. And it could be the reason why you're reaching out to people, to ask them to give you input on their plan, to comment on your skills, or to suggest other target companies that you could have in mind. You could pull down the slide. And Sunita, anything do you have to add on this?
Yeah, I think it's really important to, Maureen, to your point, that you have a plan. It's not a blind search that you see a job and you decide you're going to go after it. You should always have a plan. What do you want to do? Know what you like, what you don't like about what you're doing, and then target your search accordingly. And sometimes that's a growth move, and sometimes it's a lateral move. It's okay to take a lateral move if it means it places you in a position to do more of what you want to be doing. So you really do need that action plan.
John, anything to add?
Yeah, I just think that people that really take advantage of their full network really have the most success. So understanding that us as recruiters can only do so much. We're filling the number of positions that we have, which is a limited number of positions, and only one person can get to the finish line in each of these searches. So I really recommend it. And if we just did a poll of general counsel asking how they got their job, and it was only about 30% or less that actually got it through a headhunter. So there's only so much we can do. It's your network, it's the clients that you have, it's your classmates from school, it's business contacts that you have made throughout your career. So I just say you have to just cast a very wide net.
And we're going to talk about all that in more detail in a minute. Before getting there, if you're contemplating a job search, you do need to have an updated resume, which brings our next polling question, which is regarding the status of your resume. And so you should complete whatever is applicable to you. And even if you're not in job search mode, you really should periodically take a look at your resume and have it updated, because sometimes the opportunity may come to you when you're not even looking. So it's good to be ready when those opportunities knock. Taylor, if you could bring up the slide. Just going to provide you some basics about resumes. Rule of thumb, it should be brief, and I've always been told, and I think it really should be the case, that it's 2 pages long. I've had a long career and I can get everything important in 2 pages. That makes the real estate of the 2 pages very important. So you should make sure that you're including what really is important for the job that you have or the job that you're interested in getting. It's also important to keep it simple, not do what Elle did in Legally Blonde, like no pink resumes or whatever else she did with her resumes, is to keep it just very simple. Make sure you're highlighting your skills and you think thoughtfully about what those are. As we've already mentioned, include your accomplishments and not just your job duties, but what you actually accomplished in your job. And if you're able to quantify, that is even better. I've always been big on looking at job postings of positions that you want and looking at the skills and the keywords that are used in that job posting, and make sure you're including those in your resume, assuming they're true, that you have those skills and the keywords would apply to you, but that is something that is good to do. Do make sure that you have no typos. Have somebody else read your resume. A lot of times we'll go through it, you think it's perfect, somebody will glance at it and see a typo, and that can really be a turnoff for a company or a recruiter if you have typos in your resume. And try to make sure your format is consistent as well. And I've always been advised when you're sending a resume to send a PDF, because that keeps the format consistent and set, rather than a Word version, unless you're directed by the recruiter or the company to use a Word version. So those are just some basic skills to keep in mind. You could take down the slide, Taylor. Sunita, I've heard that a resume often only gets looked at like 10 seconds. So obviously what's at the top of the resume is important. I'd like to get your reaction on that and any other advice that you have on resumes in general.
Yeah, so it's a little more than 10 seconds, but it's really not more than a couple of minutes. You know, like my organization gets anywhere between 80,000 to 100,000 resumes a year. So you can imagine for every job, there's hundreds of resumes, and we don't have hundreds of recruiters. So it's a very small team that's going through all of these resumes. And therefore, all the points you made about keeping your resume simple, being consistent, formatting, make it very easy for the reader to know what it is, you know, you're trying to say, which means very clear explanation of what you've done, how long you did it, key areas of expertise, contract law, litigation. Let that jump out at the reader, right? We don't need a thesaurus of, you know, I did this, then I did this. If you've been working for more than 15 years, we really care mostly about what you did the last 15 years. Everything else can just be a bullet. And of course, the recruiter can reach out and say, you know, 25 years ago when you worked at BarkerGilmore, what did you do? So that's fine. You don't need career objectives if you're applying for a job that's been posted, because clearly that's the job you're applying for. So you might want, that might save you some room on the resume. The other thing with the resume, yeah, 1 to 2 pages. Anything longer is really hard to get through, and sometimes might even get looked, you know, might be put aside. Graduation dates, unless you've recently graduated, you don't need graduation dates. You do need your degrees. We don't need every certificate you ever got in your life. It's great, fantastic. Nonprofit experience, only if it applies to what you're looking for. Again, this shouldn't be your entire work history if you've worked more than 15 years. It should be your most relevant work history for the job that you're applying for. And keep in mind that it really needs to jump out at the reader what it is you're really strong at, what your areas of expertise are.
John, what are your do's and don'ts about resumes?
My number one pet peeve is if anyone uses the word I on a resume. I do this, I do that, I'm this and that. Do not use the word I. That's number one. And number two is I have a rule around the office. 32 years doing this, I've never placed anyone with a 5 or 6 page resume. So we're talking a 2-page resume is ideal. There are cases where people have had 30 plus years of experience in some pretty high, powerful jobs, and it sometimes goes to 3 and maybe 4. But I just to say a 2 or 3 page resume really should be the maximum. A 1-page resume, if you are especially applying for a general counsel role, it's too short. A one-page resume, if you're a 3 to 5 year lawyer and you've worked for a law firm and that's pretty much your whole career, that's perfectly fine. But I'd say the length of the resume and using the word I, and also not being very organized. The resume is a reflection of your writing style. If you can't write a resume, you can't write a contract or a brief. So, you know, the writing style definitely needs to come across as a reflection of how you would do your work.
Right. There's been a question about including a picture. I would think you do not include a picture. You sometimes see bios that people have, you know, if you're being a speaker, you'd use a picture. I would not use one on a resume. Somebody also asked about speaking engagements. Again, if it's relevant to show your expertise in an area and you have the space, that may be a good thing to include, but it really is a weighing of the value that those engagements would bring.
Maureen, I would add that don't try to be funny.
Yeah.
A resume is not a place to be funny.
No.
Seriously, I mean, people do try, they think it's cute. It's not cute. And you don't need a cover note. Your resume should say everything. You don't need to write a whole cover note. So keep it simple, show that you can be concise. Your resume speaks to who you are, just like John said. So keep that in mind. Is this who you are, and represent that? And if you happen to be very funny, that does not need to jump out in the resume.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I can almost pick up immediately if a resume was written by a professional, and one that doesn't come across like the actual person who's writing the resume or who's presenting the resume, but also all the cutesy lines and colors and graphics and stuff like that absolutely looks terrible. So.
And a lot of people ask, I'm sorry, John. I was just going to say, a lot of people ask other people for advice. Like, you know, you have a human resources friend or someone who's a recruiter. And then what you're doing is you're cutting and pasting other people's thoughts, and the resume looks so choppy. It's got to be who you are.
Right. And I think you can show your resume to 10 different people and we'll get 10 different sets of comments, sometimes totally conflicting. So you have to make the decision. I think it's a good point. It has to be your own. Taylor, I'm not sure we showed the polling results. Okay, so good number of people do review and do have an updated resume on a regular basis. A very small 1% don't have a resume at all. So good on that. Great. John, did you have more to say about what to include on accomplishments in a resume?
Well, accomplishments really should be geared towards where you have brought the business the most value. And if you're talking in terms of accomplishments, it should say how you maybe were helping with strategy, or you're helping with the culture, or you're helping with diversity, or many other things. But, you know, there definitely should be an accomplishment section on the resume.
Okay. Right. Do we have slides for that you wanted to show some?
Well, what I wanted to do is show, so I actually, I got a resume, I received a resume from a woman this week. I'm doing a GC search. And the good news about this GC search is the GC doesn't need to be coming as a general counsel. So this woman is a GC successor, and she had JD in 91. So you're looking at a decent amount of experience, and she still had a 2-page resume. And she fit all this in 2 pages. But when she listed the bullets for her, you know, what she's done for this employer, I read this, I was like, oh my gosh, it's perfect. So, I mean, she's starting out how she advises the leadership team and the board. Then she's talking about strategy, and she's talking about her interpretation of the regulations or the laws as it pertains to her company. Obviously, there's a little more context in the resume. Then it talks about drafting, reviewing, negotiating legal documentation. She gave some examples. Then the next step was the leadership and developing people on the team and the law department budget. Next was representing the law department outside, being the representative for the law department within the company on a number of different committees and groups. And then she finished it with supported company-wide diversity inclusion initiatives through this. Now, I just would say this resume just made me fall off my chair. I thought it was the best written resume. And the first question I asked her is, did you write this resume yourself or did someone help you? She said, I wrote it myself. Now I know I really had a great candidate. I shared this resume with the CEO of my client, and immediately the CEO was like, I want to see this woman. So this is a great example. And if anyone wants an example, I told the woman I was going to use this. Obviously, no one can tell who it is. But this was a very organized, starting with, the advising leader, the board. Obviously, a GC candidate needs to have the interaction at the top of the company, and then work down through strategy, and then work down through different areas of the business, and then end it with how she's been able to impact the overall culture of the organization. I thought it was just wonderful. I wanted to share it with everyone. Feel free to use it as a template, but it got the attraction or the excitement of the CEO in less than a minute. So as Sunita says, you only have a little bit of time to catch someone's attention. This woman grabbed all of our attention in the first minute, and it was just a terrific resume. Besides this, she had terrific large law experience, and she had terrific credentials. So I mean, she has the full package. But the way she portrayed the content of her experience, I thought was just terrific.
Right, good, thanks. If you could take down the slides, Taylor. We're going to pivot a little bit now and just talk about LinkedIn. You need to be on LinkedIn whether or not you're actively looking for a job. There was a recent New York Times article that described LinkedIn as a crucial resource for finding a job, and recommended strongly that you update your profile regularly. So it brings up our next polling question, which is regarding your LinkedIn profile and how frequently you update it. So you can read that and complete that. And while we're waiting for the results, I'm going to share some basic, quickly, do's and don'ts, if you could bring up the slide. And many of these you already know, but it's always good to remind and make sure you're doing them. You should have a photo. I still see a number of people with LinkedIn profiles without photos. It should be a recent professional headshot, not a selfie, not you drinking with your buds. A summary you should include, and it's what gets searched. It should highlight your strengths and highlight what you do. Skills should be included. According to LinkedIn, having at least 5 skills will increase by 27% you're being found by a recruiter. Endorsements, I think, are good to have. If you give them, you often will get them, or you could ask people to endorse you. Check out other people's profiles, and imitation is the highest form of flattery. So you can look at what others are doing. Just make sure if you do that and you don't want them knowing you're looking at them, that you do it anonymously and turn it back on if you want them to see you again. Make sure you include the skills that you have and keywords from job posts that you're interested in, again, assuming they're accurate and true. I've always been advised not to upload my resume. That's something that you should control. And also to make sure when you're revising that you turn off your notifications so that your contacts don't see the revisions that you're making, while you're making them. So just some things to keep in mind. So if you could take down the slide and bring up the polling results. Okay, so it's a very small number, not on LinkedIn. 10% haven't really fleshed it out. Majority have it, but haven't. 40% have one, but have not reviewed or updated it in over 6 months. And the 48%, so almost half, do it regularly, which is really good. Sunita, what's your views on LinkedIn and the importance of having a good profile, especially if you're in job search mode?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn. Matter of fact, I do a weekly blog on LinkedIn just to stay connected with the community. So I think it's a great way to reach a very, very broad, even international community, and really mine your contacts and your talent that way. So look, LinkedIn lets you tell a story different than the resume. Most people who are searching will search for you with LinkedIn after either they've gotten your resume or will search on LinkedIn and then ask for your resume. So it shouldn't be a repeat of your resume. It should be even more concise than your resume. LinkedIn lets you tell a different story. You can talk about some of the speeches you made recently, the nonprofit organizations you belong to. You know, you can do all of that. You can also comment on other people's postings on LinkedIn and reference, I just attended, you know, this great webinar on looking for a job and found these 3 tips, passing it on to everyone else. That gets tagged with you. So just remember that LinkedIn is not like Facebook. Don't go on there and say, my daughter just graduated and post that, right? LinkedIn is a professional website and it should be all about you professionally and the context that you have professionally and the things that you aspire to do or are doing professionally. So I love it. I'm on it all the time. And I strongly suggest that, to Maureen's point, you have an updated LinkedIn profile, you have endorsements, you have to have a picture. You know, that's what social media is all about. It's all about pictures. If you don't have a picture there, and it has to be recent. One of the worst things in the world, as from a recruiting standpoint, is seeing Maureen's 18-year-old picture and then reaching out to Maureen. You don't want that, right? So, and I can make fun of Maureen because we work together. So, but you don't want
my
that.
18-year-old picture I may have.
Right. So that is,
mine.
it has to be very, very current. Like in the last 12 to 18 months, if you're actively looking for a job, you need to look like the picture. That won't be appreciated by either the company or the recruiter that you don't. So absolutely, big fan of LinkedIn.
Yeah.
John, should someone include in their profile that they're looking for a job? LinkedIn recommends, it has this new thing, it has open to work feature that you can set so that everyone sees you're looking for a job, and it winds up putting this badge on your picture, in fact, on your profile, or it is only supposedly accessible by recruiters outside your company. So if somebody is wants to find a job, what would you recommend they do on LinkedIn or not?
I mean, that's a great question. I would say if someone is actively looking because they need a new job, then why not? You might as well put that. But otherwise, if you just put a really high quality LinkedIn page together, a good recruiter, whether they're inside a company or outside the company like us, we're calling you no matter what. So if it's just a high quality profile, we like people that more or less don't need a new job immediately because they're doing such a great job with their current employer. So I like the idea that if you absolutely have to find a new job because you're in transition mode, why not, go ahead. But if you're not, I wouldn't do it.
Right, okay.
It's not going to slow anyone down from reaching out to you.
Yeah, I totally agree with John. I mean, we have sourcers who are looking to source jobs. And whether you are looking or not, if you have the requisite competencies, we're going to go and get you and, you know, reach out to you on LinkedIn. So it's all about the competencies and the skills that you highlight, not whether you're looking for a job.
Both of you already noted the importance of networking, and I believe it's the way that most people do get their job. John previously indicated that BarkerGilmore recently did some research that did include data about how GCs and aspiring GCs indicated that they found their current jobs. If we could bring up that slide. And John had already referenced this research. In the case of GCs, about a third of them were promoted from within. For those that were recruited to the GC role from outside, these were the results. So you'll see that 27% said they found their job via an executive recruiter, 25% through a friend or colleague, 23% company directly, 15% job posting, 12% networking. For aspiring GCs recruited into those roles from outside, the results were similar. About a quarter were through executive recruiter, about a quarter was through friends and colleagues, about 20% was the company directly, another about 20% was job postings, so that was a little bit higher than for the GC role, and less than 10% was proactive networking. At first look, these numbers were not what I would expect because networking seems really low. But if you think about it, friends and colleagues, that's networking. So when you add friends and colleagues to proactive networking, that brings GCs to 37%. And also, often you will get an email or you'll get a phone call from an external recruiter or a company recruiter, sometimes as a result of someone in your network giving your name or suggesting that they contact you, or perhaps you previously, as part of your networking, had connected with them and reached out to them and they remember you. So I believe that networking really is a much higher contributor to finding a job than these numbers perhaps would indicate. But the thing I think this does underscore, and Sunita had mentioned this before as well, that if you're looking for a job, you need a multifaceted approach to job search. And networking really is a key element of that. You could take down the slide. So even if you're not in job search mode, you really should be networking. A theme that we've had is it's good to have the connections when you don't need them. So that's the time to really be building your network. I would recommend, and I have this and do this, I create an Excel spreadsheet of all my contacts and looking through my LinkedIn and through who you have on your phone and then who you meet at events, and you keep track of the individuals. Think about the law firms you work with and people you know there, the accounting firms, your next door neighbor, the parents at your school. Really think broadly about who your network is, and especially if you're in job search mode, to be reaching out and reestablishing those connections are really important. You also could think about joining professional organizations. So like ACC, National Association of Women Lawyers, a trade association in your industry that you're in, may be a great way to expand your network. Attending presentations, whether in the old days, and we'll be back to it hopefully one day in person, but even doing it virtually, and you can reach out to people that are presenting after the fact. I recently did that and had a lovely conversation with the person who had been on the panel. So you constantly should be thinking about and adding to your network. Sunita and John, anything to add about networking?
Oh, I agree with everything you've said.
Yeah, I actually, when I interview anyone, first question I ask them when I'm talking about their current employer is how did they get the opportunity? And I love to hear that someone was asked by, former business executive or a lawyer or a board member referred them. And it shows me that the work that you did in your previous position really impressed the person enough that they would put their name on the line and recommend you to the company. So I guess one thing there about it is never burn a bridge when you're leaving a company, because you never know where you're going to run into people in the future. But that impression that you make about your work ethic and your ability to serve as a strategic advisor, it will resonate with these people, and it will bring value with, like I say, an executive leaves or a board member sits on a board of a major company, and they personally recommend you for the position. So that type of networking or that type of just leveraging your good work to get an opportunity, I think goes a long way.
Right. And now may be a good time to reinvigorate your network. A lot of people seem more willing and interested in reconnecting with people because of the pandemic, because of being stuck at home. It also is a good time to genuinely reach out to people you haven't spoken to in a while, because you are genuinely interested in what they're doing and you never know where it's going to lead. So that this may be a time for you to, look back about who you know, who you haven't spoken to in a while, who you would like to get to know, and reach out by email. Keep it simple. I've been advised like sending them on a weekend. You may get people paying more attention, but also understand that people are busy, and if they don't respond, don't necessarily take it personally. It may be in their spam folder, or they're just very busy. I generally follow the rule. I'll follow up, maybe in a couple of weeks or a month, 1 or 2 times. And then if I don't hear back, don't be a pest about it. If people want to connect, great. If not, you go with it. And if people are open to having a phone call, make it that you're, using it as the opportunity to get their advice, whether it's on the industry, on their career trajectory, not to ask them to find you a job. That's not what a networking call really should be about, unless it's your Uncle Sal and your mother has said he will find a job for you. Otherwise, you really should be that you're using it as an informal opportunity to really learn more from the person. Also, I think it's important to always give back. So think of ways that you can help the individual who you're speaking to. So whether it's introducing them to somebody else that they may want to meet, or getting them invited to an event, or if it's a recruiter, offering to help them with the search and maybe help them get engaged. So always try to give back as well. Any do's or don'ts, Anita or John, on any of reaching out to your network or otherwise?
You know, one of the things about LinkedIn is exactly what you said. You can send them a note and have a and say you want to have a conversation. The biggest don't is don't just pick up the phone and call somebody randomly. Don't cold call somebody.
Right.
You're probably not going to get a response, or if you happen to get them on the phone by accident, it's not going to be appreciated. It is much better to send an advance email, if you've got their email address, explaining why you want to talk to them, giving them time to respond, reaching out through the LinkedIn network. Even if you say, you know, you don't know me, but I know Maureen, and Maureen thought, you know, you might be somebody for me to talk to, and just network that way. That would be my biggest thing.
Right. Okay. Let's talk about job postings, because that is still a way that many have gotten jobs. So if you could bring up the next polling question, which will go to your activity and your success with LinkedIn postings. Obviously, there are, other than LinkedIn, there are Indeed, Go In-House, I Hire, Legal, Law Crossing. There's also organizations that will post jobs. And there are companies that will post jobs, and they may post on their website and may not use LinkedIn or other sites. Wherever you can, you should put in job alerts so that you're alerted when jobs do get posted. If you could put up the slide that we have. Just if you're, again, looking at job postings is something you should do as part of your search. It should not be the only thing you're doing. Not all jobs do get posted. It's important, if you can, to find a company contact that you can find out whether the job is really still active, or whether they have an internal candidate and it's really just, you know, to double check the marketplace. Getting through the algorithm can be difficult. ZipRecruiter, it recently indicated that 70% of resumes are read by software before a human. And again, they strongly encourage that you need to make sure you're using a current word processing software, and you use the simplest template possible. Using keywords that are used in the job posting may help your ability to get through that. And you need to just be realistic about your expectations if you're posting. Some companies are good at getting back to you, some not. You may or may not get a response. If you could take that down. Sunita, if you could just talk about how your company uses job postings.
Yeah, we post almost all our jobs, so 99% of our jobs. Some of our jobs are referred internally. We obviously give our internal talent opportunity to apply for jobs quicker before we post them, but once that's done, we post all our jobs. We don't, you know, take every single posting and respond to every single person. We do, however, if we invite you in to talk to us, then respond accordingly and let you know what your status is and where you're going to be positioned if you are as a candidate or not.
Right. John, let's get and talk about recruiters. Can you talk a bit about the different types of recruiters and what you think it's important that candidates know, and how they should interact with recruiters? What's the right amount of interaction and what may be too much?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's two types of recruiters, contingent and retained. We actually have a bit of a hybrid of that, where we'll only do retained for the high level of positions of CCO or a general counsel, and then some of the high level leadership positions, or maybe something that's very focused and specific, we'll do it only on a retained basis. And then on the other side, we'll do contingency, which means we only would get paid a fee after we fill the position. So we do a contingency search, but we'll work on an exclusive contingency basis where it would, the search would only be conducted by our firm. So those are essentially the two. I will say people want to check in regularly. Just so everyone out there can appreciate, I probably get about 100 a day of people that say, can we set up a time to talk? It's not an easy thing to do. We obviously can't spend our whole day talking to people that we don't have positions for. So I hope people appreciate and respect the fact that we can't talk to everyone at any given time. We have a terrific research organization. We have a terrific database. So whenever any resumes come in, we get in and they get coded properly so we can reach out to you. We don't advertise our positions. I have an inside joke here. People might get offended by it, but I've never met a lawyer that it doesn't feel they're 100% qualified for my jobs. When in the old days when we advertised, many people who weren't qualified for the jobs would spend a lot of time insisting how they were qualified for the job. So again, you have to appreciate some of the background information that we have of what a particular client's looking for, all the boxes we need to check for the candidate to be the right candidate. So as far as your interaction, I definitely think it's great to check in, but appreciate the fact if you don't get a response every single time you check in, it's because we don't have something that's right, and it's hard because the volume of emails is getting a bit out of control. So.
Can we have our last polling result, which is on the job boards, and that's so fairly mixed results. Majority being that they check them, but they've never applied, or 30%, the highest number there. So
that's perfect. That's exactly why we're in business, because it's our job to go out and reach out directly to those people who have great profiles and recruit them. So
right,
that's where we get our talent.
Right, and we have a limited time left to quickly talk about if you're successful and you get the interview. So pull up our last polling question about what was the last time you had a job interview. Obviously, in many cases now, job interviews are being done virtually, and there are pluses and minuses to that. You have to, it's less time consuming, as Sunita, I think, has indicated earlier on the company side, and on the candidate side, you don't have to travel, it can be less costly. I've been told by candidates, it's great that they, especially with remote working, they can more easily interview on the fly. So that may be a positive there. Obviously, there are concerns. You have to worry about connectivity, making sure you test the technology that's being used, harder to get your personality across. So there are a lot of pluses and minuses. If you could bring up the slide we have, this is just some, again, what should be obvious things about in a job interview, whether in person or virtually, that appearance matters. So think about what you're wearing and don't have COVID hair, perhaps. Important eye contact is important. It was one of my pet peeves when I interviewed people. If they would never look me in the eye in the interview, that I didn't take that as a good sign. Body language is really important, that you're not slouched, that you look like you're really engaged. Try to have your personality come through by smiling, nodding, and have stories prepared that you can tell about, where you faced an issue, what actions you took to address it, what was the outcome, and how it helped the company. Have those stories ready in response to the various questions you're going to get. I recommend not criticizing a current or prior employer, and also have questions. I was amazed the number of times that people would not have questions in an interview, and I would interpret it perhaps that they weren't really all that interested in the company or the job. So that's just ideas I have. If we could take down the slide, and Sunita, what suggestions do you have on interviewing?
Yeah, under the category of pet peeves, first of all, when you're invited to an interview, go to the interview. And then when you're there, don't do all the talking. Answer the questions, pause, try to build a connection, try to make sure with stories or whatever it takes that you're paying attention to the cues from the person interviewing you, that you guys are connecting. And don't be afraid to stop and say, am I answering this question the way you wanted? Or is there anything else that I can tell you? You can course correct an interview very quickly. Don't just go on a rampage of just all of the ideas that you want to share and the pre-rehearsed conversation. Let the conversation flow by itself and try to connect. Now, virtually, it's harder to do that connection with the eye contact and so on. Again, probably virtually even more important to pause and say, okay, did I answer the question? Is there anything else I can tell you? And allow the interviewer to take the interview in the direction they want. And just go with that and be nimble enough to answer the questions.
Great. Could we have our polling results? Okay, so we see that 30% haven't interviewed in less than 5 years, but haven't interviewed last month. Interesting, 30% have been doing interviews during the pandemic, so pretty varied results there. Sunita, if somebody has lost their job or they're being let go, what would you recommend they say? Should they volunteer that in the interview, or if they get asked, what should they say?
Yeah, I think it's more than okay to say, especially let's say with COVID, I was furloughed or I was laid off or my company consolidated. There's nothing for you to be embarrassed about in saying that you're no longer working at an employer because of those reasons. Now, if you were let go and there was a reason you were let go, that I think is a little more sketchy, especially when you think about the legal environment that we're in and the type of jobs you're all looking for. So I think in those cases, you're going to have to be more careful about what you say. But in any other case, absolutely, it is quite okay to say, I no longer work there and here's why.
Okay. John, what's your view on that and any other mistakes you've seen people make in an interview?
Yeah, well, Sunita and Andy, you both were in accord on that one. The people who talk too much. So the bottom line is this is the measure. If you're talking half the time and the interviewer is talking half the time, you're doing great. So 50-50. If you're doing all the talking, 100% guarantee you're not getting the job. If they're doing all the talking, you don't have a chance to make a good impression. So that's not going to work. So 50-50. A couple of tips. One, when you're asked what's the greatest value you bring to the business or what's your greatest strength, do not start that answer with I think, which is what 95% of the people do. Refer to your reputation, meaning what have you been told by others? One of the things consistently on my reviews is this. One of the things that the CEO just shared with me was I did this. One of the things I got an award for was for this. So talk about things that other people have commented on or are typically in your reviews. It gives you a chance to brag about yourself in a very humble way. You're standing on your own merits. So those are some great tips. I guess I'd say the last thing is, as far as questions go, my favorite questions are questions when I say you're getting the answers to the test before you take it. What does that mean? Ask a question. What do I really need to bring in here? What do I need to come in here and do to hit the ground running in your eyes? And a longer term question, what do I need to have accomplished after the first year to be considered a success in this role? Stop talking, listen. They'll tell you all the keys that you really need to understand for the position to be successful, and then you can reply how you fit that bill. Another great question, what kind of person is typically best suited for the culture here? Can you share the culture and what kind of person typically succeeds here? Again, great question. Stop talking, let them talk about the ideal person or personality, and then you can reflect on how you fit that bill.
That's great. We have very limited time. We only have 2 minutes left. We have gotten in a lot of questions, some of which we've gotten to, some not. So we'll hopefully get back to them. We'll get back to you separately on that if we can. But in the 2 minutes we have remaining, Sunita, what do you think is the most important takeaway for people today?
I think if you're looking for a job or you're thinking about making a change at any time in the near future, make sure you understand the company you're going into. Do your homework, do your homework, do your homework, do the research. You know what type of a culture you work best in. Every company has a very unique culture. Make sure you study that carefully so that you can be as successful as you want to be.
Right. John?
Yeah, again, I think that people who are short-sighted and say, I'm happy, I'm not interested in looking for something new, you never know what you're missing. So do the work we're talking about. Put up a good LinkedIn bio. The worst thing that you can do is say, hey, I'm not interested in that opportunity. A lot of times the people that I reach out to are saying, I'm perfectly happy, I'm not looking, but boy, that sure does sound good. They go home at night, they talk to their family, they lay in bed wide awake, looking at the ceiling saying, I can't let this opportunity pass me by. So you don't know what you're going to be missing if you don't go put yourself out there. So that's what I recommend.
And sometimes I find too, that sometimes in the past, when you interview, you realize that you really like your current job.
Yeah.
So it could be that you decide you want to stay because you didn't like that, but you may find the opportunity, so it can work both ways. But I want to thank both of you. I greatly appreciate your participating today. Sunita and John and Taylor, thank you, although people didn't see you. Obviously, Taylor is the one who makes this all work. And I want to thank all the participants for joining. And again, the materials will be available as John indicated at the beginning. Thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you in